Hey guys, tonight we ride straight into the frozen, mud-caked, and occasionally downright ridiculous world of the medieval Wild West, where blizzards, armor, and cowboy hats all collided in ways history books politely pretend didn't happen. Out here, survival wasn't just about grit, it was about knowing when to swing an axe, when to tie a rope, and when to admit the cow was smarter than you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe pull a blanket over your shoulders for that authentic frontier chill. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our tale begins in the winter of 1886. The kind of winter that could freeze your breath mid-laugh, humble the toughest rancher, and turn a quick trip to the barn into a legendary survival story. Part 1, congratulations. You've woken up in the coldest year of your life. You open your eyes and immediately regret it. The year is 1886. You live somewhere on the western frontier, and the good news is you're alive. The bad news is so is winter, and it's coming for you personally. Outside your tiny cabin, the landscape is locked in a frostbitten death grip. Inside your tiny cabin, the air is only marginally warmer, but congratulations, you've invented indoor refrigeration without even trying. Your bed is a wooden frame with a straw mattress that squeaks like a dying mouse every time you shift. None of this memory foam nonsense. Your pillow? If you're lucky, it's a sack with old clothes stuffed in it. On top of you are layers of wool blankets, and underneath you is a growing awareness that if you move even 1 inch out from under them, your life choices will be questioned. The fire in the stove died hours ago, because you can't exactly get up every 30 minutes at 3 a.m. to keep feeding it, unless you want to join the snowman outside as a permanent lawn decoration. The air in the cabin stings your nose with every breath. You watch your breath puff into little clouds and think, wow, nature's trying to assassinate me before breakfast. You consider staying in bed forever, which sounds great until you remember that your indoor heating system currently consists of your own body heat and stubbornness. Eventually, you do the thing every frontier survivor dreads. You throw off the covers. The cold hits you like a debt collector who's just spotted you across the street. This is not your regular, chilly morning cold. This is cold with teeth. It bites your fingers, chews on your ears, and makes you seriously consider whether you can just hibernate like a bear until May. You scramble for the clothes you wisely tucked into the foot of the bed last night. Yes, that's a real thing people did, because nothing says frontier luxury like slipping into pre-warm trousers instead of trying to shove your legs into frozen denim popsicles. Your wool socks barely register as protection against the icy plank floor. Every step sends an Arctic shock up your legs. Somewhere in your mind, you imagine the floorboards whispering, "Welcome to your morning cardio, peasant." You reach the iron stove in the corner, your one true friend, your lifeline, your very reason for not dying today, and open the door. Cold ashes stare back at you like, "Yeah, we gave up hours ago. Fine, you've got this." You've been preparing for this exact moment since last fall, when the smart part of your brain realized, if I don't have dry kindling by winter, I will die in my sleep. You pull out the little stash of kindling, thin wood strips, maybe some dried grass, and if you're really blessed, a scrap of paper you didn't have to waste on important things like writing letters. Your matches? Kept in your pocket overnight because out here, wet matches equals death certificate. You strike one. That tiny flame is laughably small compared to the vast, soul-crushing cold surrounding you, but you cup your hands around it like you're shielding the hope of humanity. Slowly, blessedly, the fire catches. Kindling turns to flame, flame turns to heat, and you're on your way to not dying. The stove starts to warm, radiating the first hints of life into the room. You sigh in relief, and then realize this will be the only time you feel slightly smug all day. Because now comes the next frontier survival quiz. What's for fuel? If you live near a forest, great, you have logs. If you live out on the Great Plains, where trees are rarer than good dental care, you've got buffalo chips. And yes, that's exactly what you think it is. Dried buffalo poop. Before you wrinkle your nose, know this: buffalo chips were basically nature's perfect briquette. Free everywhere, dried by the sun, and hot burning with almost no smell. When the buffalo population crashed thanks to overhunting, settlers switched to cow chips. So yes, in 1886, if you wanted warmth, you were literally burning crap. And you were grateful. You toss a few buffalo chips into the fire, and they catch fast. Now you've got heat, baby. The kind of heat that makes your stiff fingers start to feel again. Sure, the feeling part includes stabbing pins and needles pain as your blood circulation wakes up. But that's just the frontier version of a spa treatment. The sun hasn't even risen yet. Winter days here are short, and if you want to get anything done, you'll need to start early. You look around your cabin, one room, roughly the size of a modern walk-in closet, and that's being generous. You sleep, cook, eat, and hide from death in this box. The walls are logs with the cracks stuffed with whatever you could jam in there. Moss, clay, mud, even old rags. If you live in a sod house, you're in a dirt cube, warmish, but with the added fun of bugs, dust showers, and the occasional snake in the wall. Your tiny frost-covered windows, if you even have glass, are bleeding heat like a gut wound. But they also let in just enough morning light to remind you that, yes, it is still snowing. And yes, you will still have to go outside today. You stir the pot you left on the stove last night. Inside beans. Maybe with a scrap of salt pork if you're feeling fancy. This will be breakfast, and if you're smart, you'll eat it standing right next to the stove so you can pretend you live in a warm, civilized home instead of an icebox with personality that you're still layering up in your head. First the long johns, then a flannel shirt, then a wool vest, then your coat. Wool socks, boots sealed with beeswax, mittens because gloves are for amateurs, and your hat because science has confirmed that if you go bareheaded in a western winter, you might as well just climb into a snowbank and write your will. You step outside and immediately wish you hadn't. The cold slaps you in the face like it's been waiting for this all night. You can feel the wind slicing through your layers as if to say, "Nice try, city boy." Somewhere out there in the distance, your livestock are waiting, steaming breath curling in the air, wondering if you've remembered they exist. The blizzard isn't here yet, but you can tell it's coming. The sky's got that heavy, weird look like nature's holding its breath. Old-timers can read these signs like a gossip column. They know trouble's coming. You hurry back inside to check your fuel and food again, mentally calculating how long you can last if the storm traps you indoors for days. And as you sit by your stove, thawing your fingers and trying not to think about the frost forming on your indoor walls, you realize something. This is just the morning. And the real fun hasn't even started. Because it's 1886. You're in the Wild West. And winter is about to show you why it's the most feared outlaw on the frontier. Part 2: Fuel, Fashion, and Frontier Logic. So here you are, standing in your one-room ice palace, congratulating yourself for getting the fire going without losing any fingers. You're feeling pretty accomplished until you remember that you're basically going to be doing this exact same thing every single morning until spring, because in the Wild West, heat is not a set it and forget it situation. Now, about this fuel problem. If you're one of the lucky few living near an actual forest, you burn wood. You know, the good stuff. Heavy logs stacked neatly outside like a Norman Rockwell painting, except your stack is slowly disappearing faster than your optimism. But if you're on the Great Plains, congratulations, you're heating your home with poop. Yes, buffalo chips, aka dried buffalo dung, are your ticket to not becoming a human ice sculpture. You just step outside, pick up nature's little brown miracles, dry them, and toss them in the stove. And don't wrinkle your nose, they actually burn hotter than some types of wood, and without the campfire smoke aesthetic that makes you smell like smoked jerky for 3 days. When the buffalo were nearly wiped out, thanks, hunting industry, people switched to cow chips, which means your heating bill is literally whatever the cows leave behind. And here's the thing, you are grateful, because without those chips, you'd be that cautionary tale neighbors tell each other. Remember the guy who thought he could make it through winter without fuel? Yeah, he's part of the fence now. The fire is roaring now, but don't get too cozy. Time to get dressed for the great outdoors. Out here, fashion is not about looking good. It's about making sure your extremities don't freeze and fall off like fragile glass ornaments. Layer 1. Long johns. Not the sleek thermal underwear of the modern age. Oh no. These are thick, scratchy wool or flannel, probably dyed an unappealing shade of frontier beige, and they cover you from ankle to wrist. They're not comfortable, but they keep you alive. And that's the motto of Western winter, where function over feelings. Layer 2. Shirt, flannel if you're fancy, plain wool if you're not. This is your first visible signal to the world that you are a rugged survivor, or at least someone trying not to die before lunchtime. Layer 3. Vest. Yes, a vest. Not for style points, but to keep your core warm. Back then, core strength didn't mean abs, it meant keeping your heart and lungs from turning into frozen meat. Layer 4. Coat, heavy wool if you're thrifty, fur if you're lucky, and buffalo if you're both rich and intimidating. Buffalo coats are the Cadillac of frontier outerwear. Thick, heavy, and capable of making you look like a mobile rug with anger issues. Legs get wool trousers, maybe with leather chaps if you're riding. Cowboys wore woolies, shaggy Angora chaps that make you look like you mugged a sheep and ran off wearing its legs. Feet, forget fashion boots. You wear heavy leather boots, waterproofed with beeswax or animal fat, and multiple pairs of wool socks. If you're the type to think one pair is enough, well, enjoy losing a few toes. Hands? Mittens, not gloves. Why? Because gloves isolate your fingers so they can die alone, while mittens let them huddle together for warmth like little digital penguins. The best mittens are fur-lined, with cuffs so long they practically wave at people. And finally, the hat. It's not optional. The Wild West has a saying, lose your hat, lose your heat, lose your head. People wore wool caps pulled over their ears or fur hats with flaps that made them look like they were about to invade Russia. A bare head in this weather is like leaving your front door open during a bank robbery. You're just asking for trouble by the time you finish dressing. You've gained 15 pounds of insulation and lost most of your mobility. You're basically a burrito of human and animal products, waddling toward the door like the Michelin Man's rougher, poorer cousin. The second you open the door, the cold slaps you in the face again, just in case you forgot who's boss. The air out here is so sharp it could be used as a weapon. Your breath instantly freezes into a little ice mustache, even if you don't have a mustache. The wind whistles through the empty prairie like a bored executioner looking for work. You glance at the sky. It's that flat, heavy gray that frontier veterans recognize instantly. A storm is coming, which means it's time for blizzard prep. Step 1. Bring in extra fuel. Whether it's logs or dung, pile it by the stove until it looks like you're preparing for a siege. Step 2. Check your food stores. Count your beans, flour, and salt pork like you're running a miser's auction. Step 3. Run a guide rope from your door to the barn so you don't get lost in whiteout conditions. Laugh all you want, but plenty of people in the Wild West died trying to walk 20 feet from their house to their livestock because they got disoriented in the snow. You feel a weird calm before the storm. The wind slows. The birds vanish. The whole world seems to take a deep breath. And then the snow starts. First, it's cute, little flakes drifting down. But then the wind kicks in, and suddenly the flakes are horizontal. Snow starts piling against the walls, finding cracks in the cabin, and even sneaking in through the windowsills. You throw more fuel into the stove and start heating rocks to wrap in cloth for your bed later. Because here's a fun fact. There's nothing quite like sliding into bed with a hot rock at your feet. It's the frontier equivalent of an electric blanket, minus the electricity, safety regulations, and comfort. The storm is building. The temperature is dropping. The Wild West is about to remind you, again, that survival out here is less about grit and more about having the right layers, the right fuel, and the common sense to use them. You settle into your seat by the stove, watching the snow swirl outside. You are warm for now. You are alive for now. And you have just enough sense to know that in this land, for now, is the most you can ever promise yourself. Part 3. The blizzard arrives. The sky has that don't make any plans look. You've seen it before. Flat gray, heavy as a landlord's stare, and just waiting to ruin your day. The air is too still, too quiet. Even the wind has taken a coffee break. You know what this means. Nature's cooking up something nasty, and you're the main course. You're not some greenhorn fresh off the train. You've been here long enough to know the drill. Step 1. Check the fuel pile. You stack more logs or buffalo chips by the stove until the corner looks like you're opening a questionable artisanal dung shop. Step 2. Secure the lifeline rope from the cabin to the barn, because blizzards in the Wild West don't just block your view. They erase reality. Step 3. Pray to whichever deity is in charge of toes, because you'd like to keep all of yours. And then, it starts. At first, a few flakes drift down like nature saying, "Oh, look how pretty." Don't be fooled. This is the opening act. The real show begins when the wind shows up like it's late to the party. Suddenly, snow is flying sideways, stinging your face with the precision of 1,000 icy bees. Within minutes, the world outside your tiny window has disappeared. The barn, which is only 30 feet away, could be in another county for all you can see. The snow piles against the cabin walls, climbing higher and higher, like it's trying to bury you alive. Which, to be fair, it probably is. You keep feeding the stove. The fire inside is your entire survival strategy condensed into one glowing metal box. The room starts to warm, but the wind howls around the cabin like a pack of wolves that just found out you're out of bacon. It rattles the door, seeps through cracks, and makes the whole place groan like it's considering collapsing just to spite you. You light a candle because, let's face it, There's a comfort in having a little circle of light in the middle of a world gone white and screaming. You put a pot on the stove, beans again, maybe with some cornbread if you've got the supplies. Because nothing says wild frontier blizzard like eating the exact same meal you ate yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. Night comes fast. The wind doesn't let up. It's not the friendly who of autumn breezes. It's the "I'm coming for you" howl of a force that's been freezing people to death for centuries and isn't about to lose its winning streak now. You pile every blanket you own onto the bed. You heat rocks in the fire, wrap them in cloth, and tuck them under the covers. This is an old trick, and a good one. The kind that separates snug in bed from "why are my knees blue?" You lie down and try to sleep, but the sound outside is like living inside a drum set during a tornado. The wind bangs against the walls, snow hisses against the roof, and every now and then there's a creak that makes you think, well, that's it. We're going to wake up under a pile of snow and a very judgmental obituary. At some point in the night, you realize that surviving this winter isn't about brute strength or even stubbornness. It's about alliances. No one here survives alone. In the morning, you'll check on your neighbors if the world is still accessible. They'll check on you, because in the Wild West, sharing food and fuel isn't charity. It's making sure someone's around to pull you out when you fall into a snowdrift. The night drags on. You drift in and out of sleep, occasionally waking to feed the fire. It's not exactly restful, but you've made peace with the fact that rest in winter here is just briefly not freezing to death. Finally, morning. The storm has eased, but only because it's moved on to bully someone else. You look out the window, you look at the frost and snow plastered across where your window used to be. You open the door and are greeted by a wall of snow halfway up the frame. You dig your way out, following your rope to the barn. Inside, the animals are alive, but they give you the look. The "we survived too, now feed us before we eat your hat" look. You break the ice in their trough, haul water, toss out hay. You ration the feed carefully because you don't know how long until the next delivery from, well, no one's delivering anything. You are the delivery service. On your way back, the snow is knee-deep in some spots, waist-deep in others. The rope is your lifeline. Without it, you could wander in circles until they find you during spring thaw. You get back inside, stomp off the snow, peel off your frozen outer layers, and immediately go to the stove. The fire is low. You rebuild it without thinking because that's what survival here becomes. Instinct. You warm your hands and feel the blood return in painful little sparks, and you think about all the people who didn't make it. The ones who underestimated the wind, who thought they could make it to the barn without a rope, who didn't prepare enough fuel. You stir your pot of beans and pork, stand close to the stove, and eat your breakfast like it's a royal feast. You're still here, for now. And in the Wild West winter of 1886, for now is the biggest win you can hope for. Part 4, Breakfast of Survivors and the Art of Not Freezing Your Ears Off. Yuri standing over the stove like it's your personal sun god. Outside, the world is still frozen in shades of white and misery. Inside, the room is a little warmer than it was at dawn, which is to say, you can now remove your mittens without losing skin. The pot on the stove bubbles lazily. Beans and a scrap of salt pork. Again, you'd complain, but out here variety in winter is like a unicorn. You've heard about it, but you're not holding your breath. The beans are soft, the pork is salty, and the heat from the food works its way down your insides like a tiny marching band of warmth. You eat standing right next to the stove, because this is not the kind of place where you waste the good heat on the dining table 3 feet away. Breakfast done, it's time to suit up. Not for a fancy outing for war. A war against the cold, the wind, and your own bad decisions. This isn't throw on a hoodie and call it good weather. This is survival layering. First up, long johns. Thick wool or flannel, covering you from ankles to wrists, because exposed skin out here is just a buffet for frostbite. Then comes the shirt, flannel if you've got it, something else if you don't. Wool vest over that because your core is sacred. Over the vest, your coat. If you're rich or once knew someone who died and left you things, it's fur. Buffalo fur is the gold standard. Heavy, warm, and capable of making you look like a moving taxidermy project. Wool is fine, too, if you're the practical sort or you don't want to haul 10 pounds of hide on your shoulders. For your legs, heavy wool trousers. If you'll be riding, leather chaps on top. Or, if you're really in for it, woolies made from Angora goat hide. They look ridiculous but feel like walking inside a sheep. Feet. Multiple pairs of wool socks. If you think one is enough, you're not going to like the Frontier Amputation Club come spring. Boots. Waterproofed with beeswax or animal fat. They won't stay perfect, but every extra minute before your toes turn to ice cubes is worth the prep. Hands. Mittens. Not gloves. Gloves isolate your fingers, so they freeze one by one like little popsicles. Mittens let your fingers share heat like it's a sleepover party. The best ones are fur-lined, and they go halfway up your forearms so snow doesn't slide in at the wrists. And the final piece, the hat. You do not go bareheaded in the Wild West winter. This is not the time for fashion statements unless your statement is, I want to die. A wool hat over your ears is the minimum. Fur hat with flaps is better. If you've got a scarf, wrap it around your face until you're basically unrecognizable to your own family. By the time you're dressed, you're about 15 pounds heavier and can bend at the waist only slightly. You waddle to the door, open it, and, surprise, the cold punches you like you owe it money. The wind isn't just wind. It's a living, breathing assassin. It goes through your layers like they're made of lace, wrapping icy fingers around every exposed bit of skin. Your eyelashes freeze together. Your breath turns to ice on your scarf. Your first stop is the barn. The animals are alive barely. Their breath steams in the frigid air, and they look at you with that universal livestock expression. Feed me, water me, and stop standing there like an idiot. You break the ice on the water trough, a slab an inch thick, and pour in fresh water from the buckets you hauled. Then comes hay or whatever feed you've got left. This is where the real balancing act happens. Give them enough to keep them alive, but not so much that you run out before spring. It's a little like rationing candy for a bunch of toddlers, except the toddlers weigh 1,200 pounds and can kick through a wall. As you work, your fingers start to ache despite the mittens. Not acute ache. This is the your body is thinking about letting them go ache. You've seen it before. Blackened flesh, parts that never heal. You know to head inside before it gets that far. Back in the cabin, you strip off the outer layers and hang them where the heat can dry out the snowmelt. Damp clothes in this weather are a death sentence. You stoke the fire again, your constant ritual, and think about the storm last night. You made it through, but not everyone does. Out here, survival isn't about being the toughest. It's about being smart enough to prepare, paranoid enough to over-prepare, and humble enough to accept that one bad call can still take you out. The day's just starting, but you've already won the morning. You're warm, fed, and all your fingers still work. In the Wild West winter, that's about as good as it gets. Part 5: Blizzard Psychology and the Fine Art of Staying Sane when your snowbound UVE survived the storm. The blizzard is over. And now your reward is being trapped inside a 14 by 16 foot box with the same 4 walls, the same one stove, and the same lingering smell of beans you've been cooking for a week straight. Welcome to cabin fever. Modern people talk about going stir-crazy when they've been inside for a day or two. Out here, that's just called Monday. You don't just get a little bored. You get restless, irritable, maybe even paranoid. You start thinking the teapot is looking at you funny. Step 1 in avoiding total psychological collapse. Keep a routine. You wake up, you restart the fire, you layer up, you check the animals. You melt snow for water, you cook, you do indoor chores. It doesn't matter if you feel like doing it. The point is to keep the mental gears turning so you don't end up talking to the furniture. Step 2. Have projects. Quilting, knitting, leatherwork, carving spoons, it doesn't matter. You need to be making something, anything, so your brain feels like it's doing more than slowly marinating in boredom. Step 3. Social interaction. And this is tricky, because the nearest neighbor might be 2 miles away and the weather might kill you for trying. That's where the rope to the barn comes in. Not just for animals, sometimes for visits. And if you can't visit, you send smoke signals. Literally. Big plumes that mean I'm fine or send help before I start naming the furniture. And when the weather's too bad for visitors, you talk to whoever's in the cabin with you. Family, friends, hired help. You share stories, not just for entertainment, but because out here, oral history is how knowledge survives. You hear about that one storm in '72 when Old Man Jenkins tied himself to a chicken coop to keep it from blowing away and ended up in Nebraska. You laugh, and you also file away the important part. Don't try to save the coop in high winds. Now, about the food. Eating in winter is less about taste and more about fuel. You want fats and proteins, the kind of stuff that keeps your body's internal furnace burning. That's why pemmican, a mix of dried meat, fat, and berries, is the MVP. Sure, it tastes like candle wax that went to boot camp, but it lasts forever and keeps you alive. Still, even pemmican gets old, which is why boredom in the Wild West was sometimes more dangerous than cold. You see, a bored mind starts thinking risky thoughts. What if I just pop outside for a bit? What if I check the fence line? What if I start clearing snow for fun? That's how people end up as frozen yard ornaments before lunchtime. Which brings us to blizzard safety rule number 1. Never overestimate your sense of direction. You think you know where the barn is? Great. So did the guy they found in spring 3 feet from his front door. Whiteout conditions erase landmarks. You can walk in circles until your tracks bury themselves. Always use the rope. Always. Rule number 2. Plan for being stuck longer than you think. The storm might last a day, but the drifts it leaves can block you in for a week. That means extra fuel, extra food, and extra patience. Rule number 3. Respect the cold. You might feel fine after being outside for 20 minutes, but frostbite doesn't care about your feelings. Your ears, nose, fingers, and toes are already filling out their resignation letters. Back in the cabin, you stoke the fire higher than usual. The wind outside is still throwing itself at the walls, but the stove's heat has made a little bubble of civilization in the middle of nowhere. You might even take off your coat indoors. a luxury you wouldn't dream of during the worst hours of the storm. You sit down, and this is when the mind games start. You listen to the wind howl and imagine it as some living thing, pacing outside, looking for a way in. You swear the cabin creaks differently at night, like it's talking back. You start noticing patterns in the frost on the windows. One of them looks suspiciously like a skull. You tell yourself it's just coincidence, but you don't stop looking at it. Evenings are the hardest. The dark comes early, and lamplight is expensive. Oil or candles aren't free. You learn to do things by firelight, squinting over whatever project you've got going. Maybe you read if you're lucky enough to have books. Maybe you play cards. Maybe you just sit and listen to the wind, counting the seconds between gusts. Some nights you fall into what old-timers call first sleep and second sleep. You go to bed early, wake up in the middle of the night for an hour or two, tend the fire, maybe have a snack, then go back to bed. It's oddly peaceful. A reminder that humans weren't always chained to 8-hour sleep schedules. And when you finally drift off, it's with that strange frontier comfort. You've done everything you can for today. The fire's banked, the animals are alive, your toes are still attached. You've stared into the teeth of the Wild West winter and it hasn't chewed you up. Yet. Part 6. The Livestock Hunger Games. Keeping cows and chickens alive when nature wants them dead. You've eaten your beans. You've survived your blizzard-induced staring contest with the wallpaper. And now it's time to tend to the most ungrateful roommates you've ever had. Your livestock. Because here's the truth. These animals aren't farm decorations. They're your partners in survival. The cow gives you milk, the chickens give you eggs, the horse gives you transportation, and the mule gives you attitude. Without them, you're basically a snow-covered houseplant waiting to die. Step 1. Suit up. You've already learned the hard way that doing chores in just a quick layer is frontier code for I'd like to donate my fingers to frostbite. So you pile on everything. Long johns, trousers, chaps, multiple shirts, vest, coat, hat, mittens. You look like a fur and wool burrito and move like 1, 2. Step 2. Follow the rope. The barn may be only 30 feet away, but in Wild West winter logic, that's basically the Oregon Trail. Without the rope, you could take 3 steps and vanish into the white void forever. Step 3. Face the wind. It's not just cold, it's personal. This wind has opinions about you, and none of them are nice. It cuts through every seam, finds every tiny gap, and shoves icy air into it like it's filling out a complaint form. You get to the barn and open the door, and there they are, your animal roommates, huddled together like they've just been through a crime scene. Their breath clouds the air, and they look at you with the combined expression of, "Oh, thank God you're here, and you're late." First up, water. The trough is frozen over with a crust thick enough to skate on. You break it with whatever tool you've got. Axe, crowbar, the sheer power of swearing loudly. You haul buckets of fresh water from the well, if it hasn't frozen solid, or melt snow in big pots over the stove. Pro tip: never give them snow alone. It's like eating ice cubes for hydration, it actually makes them colder. Then, feed. Hay for the herbivores, grain for the chickens. You measure carefully, because this is a math problem where the wrong answer is everyone starves in March. Feed is finite, and every bite today is one less bite for tomorrow. If you've got cows, you check their condition. In a mild winter, they might still paw through the snow to reach grass. In 1886 to 87? Forget it. The snow's too deep, the wind's too cruel, and the grass might as well be on Mars. Chickens are surprisingly fragile and cold. You keep them in a corner of the barn where it's out of the wind, maybe with extra straw to nest in. And no, you don't get fresh eggs every day in winter. Sometimes they just stop laying. You'll survive. Maybe horses? You groom them quick to keep their coats clean and insulating. You check their hooves for ice balls, yes, that's a thing. And if your horse is your main transportation, you treat it like your most precious possession, because without it, going to town becomes freezing to death halfway there. All the while, you're moving fast, partly to get back to your warm cabin, partly because if you slow down your muscles will stiffen and you'll start to feel the wrong kind of tired. That's hypothermia knocking, and you don't answer that door. Out here, animals aren't just work. They're insurance policies. If you lose them, you lose food, mobility, and trade goods. And the winter of 1886 to 87? It was like a reaping day in the Hunger Games. This was the season when cattle died by the hundreds of thousands, frozen solid where they stood, piled against fence lines, their last attempt to escape the wind. Ranchers woke up to a white landscape littered with brown lumps that weren't hay bales. Big cattle barons, the ones who let herds roam free on the open range, learned the hard way that free range in a blizzard just means free meat for the coyotes come spring. Theodore Roosevelt himself, ranching in Dakota Territory, lost more than half his herd and called the losses crippling. That's rich guy code for, I cried into my buffalo coat. After that winter, ranching changed forever. Fences went up. Herd sizes went down. Hay storage became standard. The era of massive, unmanaged herds was over. Not because people suddenly cared about efficiency, but because Mother Nature slapped the industry in the face and said, "Adapt or die, sweetheart." Back in your barn, your animals are watered, fed, and glaring at you for leaving. You pat a cow, scratch a horse's neck, and head back toward the cabin. Following the rope, you fight the wind the whole way, snow creeping into your boots, ice forming on your scarf. When you finally slam the cabin door shut, you're panting, sweating under all the layers, and that's dangerous. Sweat is the enemy. You strip down fast, hang your outer gear near the stove, and flop into the nearest chair. The fire crackles. Your fingers burn as feeling returns. A delightful frontier sensation known as the screaming memes. Your ears tingle under your hat. You stare at the stove and realize you're already thinking about the next trip to the barn. Because in the Wild West, animal care isn't a once-a-day thing. It's morning and night, every day, no matter how bad the weather. You may not love the chores, but you love what they represent. Survival. Your animals aren't just livestock. They're your coworkers in the business of not dying.